Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome back to Sofa Safari, Chad and Luke edition. Today we have the cheddar cheese sitting on the front over there. That's another nickname that we've given Chad, by the way. Well, that's what the Shangaan staff call him, at least.
More names than an African wild dog.
Yeah, so cheddar cheese, lucky leprechaun, pink prawn. You know, there's a variety of these things going around. Poor old Chad. But this afternoon, what myself and Chad are trying to do, we're trying to team up. There's something, we want to go and track some things out in the east. And that being said, we are going to go east. We're going to go to the Mashutten Dam and we'll go south from there. That's much to Chad's enjoyment because we actually refer to Chad the East Cocking because he loves to go east just about every day of his life. So I'm going to go check out what I'm apparently missing out there every day. And let's see what we can find. Chad's been working on his solo safaris for the last few days. He did have some track and sign for some dogs in that area. I believe, did you actually see them?
Yeah.
You did? There we go. Sorry, I haven't caught up on that one yet. But some dogs were out there, so maybe we'll bump them. Mashutten Dam's becoming a bit of a hive of activity, so maybe we'll get some elephants out there, or just something coming down for a lovely drink. So stick around, let's see what the afternoon brings. And I think this is the first time we've started a sofa safari in the afternoon in a very long time, and that's probably because it's winter at the moment and the mornings are getting chillier and chillier, but we're not going to give up on them that easily. We'll still get out there a few mornings to come. But stick around, let's see what we can find, guys. Chad, you ready?
Always born ready. I'm tracking your bonnet.
Yeah.
Squirrels.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right, guys, so I've come across my tracker, Chad the White, Chad the Great, has come across a couple of tracks for me to stop and have a look at. And it's a track that we haven't had a look at yet on Sofa Safari. But it's a beautiful track. It's one of the best ones to see, and it's quite a strange animal. It's only got 3 toes. So let's have a quick look. Let me see if I can find a sticky. There we go. That's actually not a stick, but there one is. All right, so the track is just over there, and it's quite a big track. What I'm going to do is just basically outline it for you guys, and I'll explain a little bit about it. And then what I want you to do is think about what track this is, and in the comments below, let us know if you have an idea of what left this track behind. Now, the track is one of the bigger ones that you can hope to see while out on safari, so I'm just going to do that. There's really only one animal, being the elephant, that has a bigger track than this. So as you can see, you've got it going like that, around there. I'm just helping the camera see it a bit more, and over there. So what we have is a 3-toed animal. We've got 1 toe, 2 toe, and the 3rd toe there. We've got this big front toe, like that, and that also gives us the direction of the track. So this animal has been walking that way, and then we've got these 2 side toes which are a little bit smaller, and then this big back pad. Now, I don't know if you can see with the camera the detail in the back here, but it's very similar to your handprint. Right, so if I was to put my hand there, if I was big enough, at least if I weighed as much as this animal does, you might be able to see all of those patterns come out. Or if I had crevices in my hand like this animal has in its foot. But these little cracks and crevices and so on that display in the track actually give some of the trackers out here an indication as to exactly which individual left the track behind. So in other words, it is like his handprint or his fingerprint or something like that. But as I say, it's a big animal. It's got 3 toes, and funny enough, there's very few animals that have this sort of foot structure. It's called an odd-toed ungulate, and there is one other animal that I can think of right now. There's a few others, but one being the zebra, which only has 1 toe. If you think about a zebra track, looks like a horse track, so that's just the 1 toe. Rhinos have 3 toes, so they're both odd-toed ungulates. If you think about something like impala has 2 toes, a giraffe has 2 toes, so they're just referred to as ungulates. But let me know in the comments what you think it is. Very, very, very special animal, and I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. But let's carry on looking for some actual wildlife this afternoon. I'm sure Chad can spot us something. My hopes are high. I put money down on it, so Chad?
I've got 5 toes. Does that make me an odd-toed ungulate?
Yeah.
I learned in school that's an odd number.
Zebras, wildebeest, impala, bird, elephant track. So we have come into what looks like a scene out of the Lion King, guys. Beautiful. We just here at Mashutten Dam, which is the biggest water body on Tulu's property. There's a kudu behind us as well. This track is on fire. But look at this. It's beautiful. If you were a South African right now, and this is usually the go-to South African joke, is when we see scenes like this, immediately the South African in the group will say, oh look, it's the migration, which of course in Southern Africa, or at least in South Africa, doesn't happen as such. But we've got some beautiful Birchall zebra all over the show here, also known as, and more recently known as, a plains zebra, because you see them on the plains, funny enough, and they like grass. And it's not uncommon to see zebra mingling with wildebeest over there at the back, the blue wildebeest, who we've seen numerous times out in out this direction. There we go. Bit of drama going on now. The one zebra lost his cool and started running, and that's kind of spurred everyone into taking a bit of a jog this afternoon. But yeah, not uncommon to see wildebeest and zebra together. They do enjoy a very similar terrain. They enjoy the exact same species of grass when they come to eat, and they just enjoy each other's company. You know, the more eyes and ears, the better for keeping an eye out for those lions and leopards and all those unsavory characters. For those of you that will remember correctly, a herd of zebra is called a dazzle, and a herd of wildebeest is called a
Implausibility. Or a confusion.
Or a confusion,
That's
which is
whatever.
what Google will tell you.
All of you told me.
Yeah. But we like implausibility as well. I'm just watching now over the back here, behind Brit, there is a kudu and her little baby popping out through the trees there. I don't know if we're going to get a good view of them, maybe eventually. So we've just come round the bend to have a look at this beautiful scene of the mother kudu with her little calf over there. You know, they walked behind us just a little bit earlier. It was a bit tricky to keep up with them while we had the zebras, the pregnant ladies walking by. But to see this mom and baby coming down for a drink now at Mashatten Dam is wonderful. I mean, that baby is still very small as far as kudus go, and given that she's by herself with her baby, I would probably suggest that she's yet to introduce this little one to her herd, to her sisters and her mother and, you know, her family. And it usually takes them a few weeks to do that. You know, firstly, a lot of these animals, and most animals for that fact, you know, lions, leopards, all sorts of things. Well, I guess leopards, you know, sort of obligatory, that they don't really have anyone to introduce their youngsters to. But most of these herbivorous animals will usually take 2-3 weeks just to imprint on their baby and to get to know their baby and so on before they introduce them to the herd. So it's quite sweet to see her bringing it out for a drink out into the big wide open world. Very peaceful, very wonderful. Alright guys, so one of the main reasons myself and the Pink Prawn decided to team up today is because we wanted to have the best odds of tracking a particular animal that is yet to be seen on Sofa Safari. Now, I'm not going to say whether there are many of them or if there are few of them in this area. There's been a lot of questions that have been posted on our YouTube comments and Facebook and things like that, and you know, it's an animal that, and they're just over here, but we'll show you them in a second. But it's an animal that we are very hesitant to show on camera, and the main reason being is that he's regarded as one of the most poached and trafficked animals on the planet. And we took the decision early on in Sofa Safari to not show this beautiful animal, but it is such an iconic animal, and we thought we could only do it justice and do you guys justice by at least showing it once. So this will be the only time that us on Sofa Safari, myself, Chad, Foreman, Britt, any of us involved at Tundatula, will be showing the very, very beautiful white rhinoceros for you guys today. This is an animal that has been under massive persecution for the last, what's it, Chad, about a decade now? Over a decade, about 12 years. Starting in 2008 when the rhino poaching epidemic started in southern Africa. And to see them is an absolute joy while you're on safari. They're such an iconic species. Of course, this rounds out the big five for Sofa Safari. You can now say that you have seen the big five while being with us throughout this entire lockdown COVID-19 situation that we're all facing. Of course, the rhinos are oblivious to that, and they are oblivious to the war that rages on around them in terms of their protection that rages on day after day on the African continent. If I can go back to that 2007-2008 period, on average South Africa used to lose between 10 and about 16 rhinos per year pre-2008. And that was largely for the horn, once again, but not because of Eastern medicinal uses and ideas like that, but more so for dagger handles, funny enough, for the Middle Eastern area. Fast forward to 2008, and it suddenly became a widely popular medicinal product for the eastern portion of Asia, unfortunately. For a whole host of things, of course, the most sensational one being erectile dysfunction, but the uses of it range from flu medication to cancer treatments to a hangover cure to just about anything you can imagine. And the reason why some people are under the perception or under the idea that this actually works to cure your hangover or to cure your ED is because you're dealing with gangsters that are selling these things, and they will very often lace that ground down horn with painkillers or with Viagra or with something like that. However, what's become more devastating in past years, recent years, is that rhino horn is now deemed more of a status symbol by many people. And so what you're finding is that actually very affluent, well-educated and well-off people in the Far East are purchasing an entire rhino horn as a mantelpiece or as a gift for someone else. Now, to put into perspective what sort of money is at play, a rhino horn can sell for between, forgive me, Chad will correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes for between 60,000 to 100,000 US dollars per kilogram. You happy with that number? Yeah, so it ebbs and flows. It's kind of like the stock exchange. It's crazy how this thing can do that. But very disturbing to know that educated people are buying into this. So it's not an educational issue anymore. But to anyone that is considering coming and poaching these rhinos we're showing you today, this footage will only air in 2 days' time, and we'll also be making use of stock footage, and we will not be giving away any form of location. And as I say, we will not be filming rhinos again on Sofa Safari. So please soak it up, enjoy this beautiful sighting of what we call a crash of rhinos. Chad's going to chime in with some extra information now, and we'll try and just go back and forth as we discuss things. And we're going to see if we can get a little bit closer for you so that Chad can tell you more about the conservation of them. But I do want everybody to know that across the Timbavati, our APU systems are strong. They are still in place regardless of the lockdown. They are still getting the support they need from the lodges and from the reserve as a whole. And these are people, men and women, that work tirelessly to protect these animals, as well as canine units. So we have been joined by man's best friend, and that has been a tremendous help in the war against rhino poaching and other wildlife poaching. There are many animals that are poached in these systems year after year, day after day, but it is the rhino that gains the most media attention. But I also want you guys to think about animals such as the pangolin that suffer persecution at the hands of man, and just about every other animal in Africa and across the world that suffers the persecution of man. So without sounding too depressing, let's actually sit back and enjoy this beautiful crash of rhinos and be happy that there are still rhinos in this beautiful environment, and that they are still very well protected, and that they still have the love and support of many human beings across the world.
Now, other than the pressures that these rhinos are facing in modern times, we're actually very, very lucky that they are still conserved on the face of this planet, because about 120 years ago, estimates are that there were fewer than 200 individuals of this particular species left, the white rhino, left in the world. They were wiped out in the Kruger by the late 1930s, and through much of the rest of their range. One small area in the eastern part of our country managed to conserve their rhinos, and through the advent of the ability to transport animals and translocate them into new areas, Dr. Ian Player and Operation Rhino were able to start relocating rhinos from the KwaZulu-Natal region where they were conserved into areas where they had been wiped out. And following their reintroduction in the Kruger in the 1960s, they are definitely one of the greatest conservation success stories. In the space of a few decades, they went from a couple of thousand to almost 20,000 white rhinos left in the world. So as much pressure as they are facing today, the good thing to note is that they've been under worse circumstances, and through the help of man and strong-minded conservationists, we have been able to bring them back from the brink of extinction once before. Now, it would be absolute tragedy if we let this befall their species again, and we really need to do everything in our power to stop it from getting anywhere close to that. But with the right people and with the right attitudes towards these animals, they can definitely be protected for generations to come. You'll be looking at those things and thinking those aren't black or white, they're grey. And I can tell you, if a black rhino were to wander past the scene, he or she would probably also be grey. The naming of these rhinos as black and white rhinos is one that is potentially confusing, and even the history behind the naming is not too clear-cut. Traditionally, we've often blamed the Dutch for the erroneous naming of these animals, and the idea that if you look at these rhinos, when they do lift their heads up from their grazing activity, they've got these very broad, wide mouths. Now, the Dutch word for wide is weit, and the Dutch word for white is wit, and they believe that somewhere along the line it was anglicized from wide to white, and that's why these ones became known as the white rhinos, and the more pointed lipped species, the black rhinos, got their name as black rhinos. But I have read other information in a couple of places that say that the Dutch would not have used the term wide to describe the shape of the mouth, but rather the term breder, or broad. And there's no way of mistranslating broad to white, and that the naming of them black and white rhino actually has something to do with colour. You may see on these rhinos the two-toned effect on their skin. They spend a lot of their time sitting in mud wallows, sitting in dusty areas, and depending on where that mud is formed, it could either be a lighter or a darker colour. And the belief is that in certain areas, particularly where the calcrete underlies the soils in the Karoo area, would have given rise to lighter coloured soils that the rhinos would have wallowed in and rolled in and given them a whiter colour than the black rhinos. It would have been much more common on the east coast of the country, where there's a lot of darker, more clay-rich soils that would have given the rhinos wallowing in that soil a much darker colour. So there is some truth in the coloration, but it's not their actual skin colour. Both these white rhinos and the black rhinos have grey coloured skin.
Right, so we've spoken a fair bit about the conservation of rhinos and also why we are so serious about not showing them again and why we haven't shown them before. But we just want to take some time to actually talk about the rhinos, right? They're beautiful animals. They've got an incredibly interesting, if you will, social dynamic. And there's a lot going on within the species of white rhinos. Unfortunately, black rhinos are very, very endangered animals, and I don't think we'll be seeing a black rhino today. But at least with the white rhinos, we can chat about them a bit. So Chad was just briefly saying, while he was explaining why rhinos have been called white rhinos and black rhinos, he briefly said that white rhinos, this particular species in front of us today, has a very broad face. All right, broad-lipped or square-lipped rhino is actually the correct name for this animal. The reason being is that a white rhino is a grazing animal. So when you look at the animal, you can see that its neck, its spine is naturally situated to basically force the head down. At rest, the white rhino's head is basically facing down towards the ground. It's more comfortable to feed, and it also has this big vacuum cleaner, or for our English friends, hoover mouth, that allows them to just soak up or suck up all the grass in front of them. Now, of course, they are plucking that grass and chewing it. They're not sucking it up. But yeah, that's what a white rhino is. It's also a bigger animal than a black rhino. So a white rhino can, a big bull can maybe reach 2.5 to 2.8 tons, somewhere around there. Maybe at a push 3 tons. I don't know. I haven't really weighed one in a while. Whereas a black rhino bull can get to about 1.8, maybe 2 tons. So there is quite a big difference in terms of their size and also their physique. So the white rhinos are big, they've got that pink neck, and they also have the very broad face. Black rhinos are a lot smaller, they're a more streamlined animal, and they're actually a more recent development as far as the evolution of the rhino family goes. They're not as ancient as a white rhino. But black rhinos are smaller, they don't have that severe kink in the neck. They still do have it, so you do have to watch out. But their head is situated more forward, like that, not so dramatically down. And also their face comes down into quite a sharp point. Their lip comes down into a very sharp prehensile tip. And that little prehensile tip is, you know, for lack of a better way to describe, it's like a little miniature elephant trunk. It's not so much that it can smell or suck up water or anything like that, but it can wrap around trees, and it can wrap around twigs and branches and peel off those things to chew at length. So you have one, or not even at length, they actually chew quite quickly and then swallow. But yeah, you have one that is developed or adapted for eating grass, and one that is adapted for eating twigs and leaves and so on. But we had to talk about the white rhinos as they slowly drift off. And this is quite a beautiful happening. I mean, we have a few, we have 5 of them here today. And one of my favorite collective nouns is a crash of rhinos, which is quite good, it makes sense. Almost as corny as a leap of leopards, but we like crash. And funny enough, rhinos are actually, white rhinos in particular, are actually quite gregarious animals, which means they like to live in these little groups. A little bit of a huff and a puff going on there. Other than the big dominant males who often lead quite a solitary life, until of course there's a lady in question that he wants to get to know a little bit better. But yeah, it's not uncommon to see rhinos, maybe 2 of them, 3 of them, and it's when you see a female, she usually has a calf with her, and often she'll have a calf that is of several years old, and then a younger calf as well at the same time. So they do enjoy each other's company. Probably from a safety point of view, and also just because they do enjoy the social side of things. But yeah, it's always nice to come across a little group of rhinos like this. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get close enough yet to see how many males are here, how many females are here, but just judging by how big they are from what we're seeing at the moment, there doesn't appear to be a big fully grown bull in this situation at the moment. So you might be wondering why these rhinos are kind of just sitting there looking at us, trying to figure out what we're doing, who we are, what we are. And sadly for them, they've got pretty terrible eyesight. I think you know, the textbooks will say something like 15 meters, 20 meters is their eyesight, is the limit of their eyesight. I don't know when a what do you call it, glasses specialist again? Optometrist had them last in the chair to figure that out, but you know, textbooks say many things. I will just basically say that their eyesight is poor. You can see that they don't really, when they do try to look at us, they're not too sure where we are or what we're doing. But they do hear very well, and they do smell very well. So if you happen to be downwind from them, they definitely will know that you're there. And if you step on a stick or something like that lying about, they very often spook and get ready for action. Of course, no one wants to tussle with a two-ton monster like this. But yeah, as I say, their eyesight is terrible, their hearing is great, and their smell is great. It's quite sad actually, because they really are just giant tanks. You know, there's not much that can pester a rhino. Lions are going to bounce off this thing all day. With that being said, lions do kill rhinos and they do eat them. They also kill elephants and eat them. So if you're ever wondering what eats an elephant, lions do. Lions eat everything. But it's not very often that happens. Once in a blue moon. There's only once in my career where I can remember lions having eaten or killed a rhino and were eating it. But you know, in various parts throughout Africa, in some parts of the Kruger, you get what we call super prides of lions, which are groups of over 20, maybe 25, 30 lions in one group, where like one buffalo ain't going to cut it. You know, you kind of need to hunt something big like this. But in general terms, what I'm getting at is that rhinos really, they're sort of the kings of their own will. They only really have to worry about the grumpiness of elephants and maybe other rhinos for the most part. And so that's made them quite blasé as to what's going on around them. And so even when you do step on that branch, they might perk up a little bit, but you know, as long as you keep quiet, they soon go back to feeding, which kind of works to their detriment, unfortunately. But I like to refer to them as tank puppies. I just think they're a wonderfully cute, overgrown puppy that cruises around the African bush, and it's always a joy to see them. And I please ask that if you guys have any further questions on rhino behavior or rhino interaction, just drop them in the comments below. Myself and Chad will keep an eye on them, and we'll get back to you through the written word and so on. For anyone that is maybe looking for a bit more of a question, because believe it or not, that track I showed you a little bit earlier comes from the three-toed rhinoceros behind me. It's a wonderful track. It's a great track to see when you're out and about. And the reason why I put that as a question too is because me and Chad weren't actually sure if we were going to find these rhinos this afternoon, so we didn't want to allude to anything. But if I can pose you another question, Guys, tell me, what is the gestation, in other words, the pregnancy length, of not only a white rhino, which is the bigger one behind me, but also a black rhino? Let me know what those two respective gestation periods are, and if you get them right, we'll give you a virtual high five. But yeah, we're going to enjoy them a little bit longer. Let's see if we can maybe change positions again, and I think Chad's going to give you a little bit more information on this. So what a beautiful scene to end off a pretty special sighting. And it's a sighting that we all truly hope is going to be here for many, many years to come, despite the pressure that these animals are under, that this species is under. As Luke said, Timbavati is definitely doing their bit, even when the world is in lockdown and things like this you might think wouldn't be a priority. As such an iconic species, they are definitely the focus of the reserve, keeping them as well as all the other animals and this habitat conserved. Timbavati is very, very involved in that. The lodges are still contributing and helping. And even in the absence of the tourists that would typically fund this reserve, we are still doing our bit to contribute. But if anybody back home feels like they wish to help to keep this place as running as smoothly and as securely as it is, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We can put you in touch with the right people that are looking after these animals, and if you want to make any contributions in any way, it would be most appreciated. As Tandatula, we're obviously also doing our bit. The Sofa Safari team and myself doing solo safaris when we're out here every day. We are also doing patrols, making sure there's no suspicious activities, monitoring the animals, and just having a presence in the reserve. Full moon nights, the reserve has requested that the lodges go out and spend nights driving around, just to ensure that these animals are protected now and for hopefully a long time to come. So we're going to leave them be, but I hope that you have enjoyed this very special episode of Sofa Safari. So thanks for inviting me to come along, and keep these animals in your thoughts always. It's a beautiful sunset this evening, and for Carol Baber, of course. Carol, if you're watching, another sunset for you. But this time we have our beautiful hippo, who is just here in the foreground. Britt's got him in frame with the big camera, so we're hoping he gives us a little bit of a yawn. I've been promising that to you since the very, very first Sofa Safari episode, so I'm hoping to, give that to you guys today. I'm sorry it's taken so long. Hopefully Harry the hippo produces some goods. He's definitely shaking his ears and whatnot over there, which is also quite fun to watch. There we go. No. There he is. Bit of a grumpy yawn to get things going, but I'm sure as we sit here a little bit longer, he'll start showing us his teeth more and more. Now, I don't know if any of you read my most recent blog post on animal communication and the various forms of communication that they make use of. But what he's making use of right now is visual communication. So he is not actually yawning, he's not tired. What he's trying to do is show us how big his teeth are, show us how big his mouth is, and basically he's just trying to scare us. He's trying to dominate the situation and make sure that he maintains control, which you can't blame him. I mean, he needs to look after his home, and we are quite a big thing, and he wants to make sure that we understand he is bigger and scarier than us, and I'm not going to argue with him about that. But hippos are an incredible animal. I mean, in these parts, they're not very, very common, because the river systems running throughout the Timbavati are not perennial, so they do not run all year long. There's actually not one river in this game reserve that runs all year long. So we have very seasonal rivers, and because of that, we do not have a very big hippo population. We do have them dotted here, there, and everywhere in these big watering holes that you find around. But if you go into the east, or further east into the Kruger, where there's the Olifants River system, all the way up to the Levuva River system, the Shingwetsi, these are all big rivers that run throughout the Kruger. You will find many, many, many hippos in those particular areas, as well as many crocodiles. And that's a great relationship, by the way. Crocodiles and hippos, they kind of just tolerate each other, or the hippos tolerate the crocs, because at the end of the day, the hippos really are in charge. But it's a good opportunity to talk about why hippos remain in water all day long. They are they've got a very special skin type, and they've got very little hair on them, and that skin type is very sensitive to sunlight and to heat and so on. Not from a point of view of being the sunset's looking more and more beautiful across the water here as I talk, but not from a point of view of being quite literally burnt by the sun, but more from being kind of dehydrated by the sun. Their skin starts to get really quite dry and crispy, and that's really dangerous for the animal. And so they will spend an inordinate amount of daytime hours in the water, if not all of the daylight hours are spent in the water. In winter, when it's a bit cooler, when the sun's not so harsh, they are known to come out and sun themselves during the day on the banks and feed on grass and just graze a little bit longer. He's having a lovely roll around. But in general, they like to stay in the water, and they also do make use of something that I call blood sweat, which is a sebaceous secretion, so it comes out on their skin. Chad's going to give us the proper name. What's the proper name of it?
Hipposudoric acid.
Hipposudoric acid, everybody. There we go. Hipposudoric acid. Thank you very much, Tracker Chad. Cheddar cheese. And that secretion that they give off actually has a very reddish, pinkish color. And the reason for that is to help them maintain the hydration within their skin, the water, the content, the moisture of their skin, in order to help them survive heat a little bit better. And that's often why you find hippos, because their heads stick out of the water more often than any other part of their body, that they'll often have a lot of pink around the face, around the ears, the nostrils, and so on. It's just that secretion coming into use. So yeah, fun animal to spend time with. They are grazers. That means that they eat grass. They are only grass-eating animals. So they have a very similar digestive system to elephants and rhinos and things like that. And yeah, so if you are lucky enough to see one grazing in the evening, it's quite a fun thing to watch a hippo feeding and just going about his business. It's kind of like watching a giant tick moving around the land, if you will. Tiny little head in comparison to this big old body, and they can weigh upwards of 3 tons, so they are a very big animal. But yeah, we're going to enjoy them a little bit longer as the sun begins to set. Hopefully we get some good yawn action for you, and let's see what else he gets up to. So before we leave our hippo, who has given us a fair bit of entertainment this afternoon with that beautiful sunset going on behind him, we just wanted to once again wish April and Will a great weekend ahead. It would have been your wedding, we believe, on Friday or Saturday. I think it was Friday. Regardless, we hope you guys have a wonderful day nonetheless. We know that it's the world's in turmoil at the moment, guys, and we couldn't be more sorry that you can't have your special day, but you will get to have that day one day, and from all of us at Untitled, we'll be definitely toasting to you guys come Friday. So enjoy your day, guys. Right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for this very special edition of Sofa Safari. It's been a pleasure having cheddar cheese with me today. Thank you for tracking, Chad. It was a great honor to introduce you to that very special animal, the white rhino, in this area, and it was quite fun to tell you about them finally, and to show you a few things about them. So yeah, wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, please hold rhinos in close part, or close to your heart, however you want to say it. They definitely are a species that needs a lot of human compassion at the moment and support. And we always say, if you have any ideas or any way that you would like to try and support the efforts to protect rhinos, please do come forward with those. You're welcome to get in contact with us through the comments or through our various avenues of connection, and we'll be happy to advise you further from there. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Have a wonderful evening wherever you are, or wonderful morning. We don't know where you are. Might be morning there, might be evening there. So yeah, enjoy your gin and tonic, as we always say, or enjoy your hot chocolate or your coffee with the morning sunrise, or whatever it is. And from myself and Chad, watch out, Chad, don't break that. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. See ya.